Some of the oldest known drawings of Singapore's wildlife are being featured in this year's Voila France Singapore Festival. And that's because they were made by two French naturalists, Diard and Duvaucel. They lived here more than 200 years ago, and it was the French embassy here in Singapore that uncovered them.
So here to tell us some more is His Excellency Marc Arbonneau, Ambassador of France to Singapore, and Research Associate Martin Lau from the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum. Both of you are welcome to the studio. Good to have you with us this evening. Ambassador, I'll come to you first and tell us how these drawings came to be discovered.
Well, first, thank you for having us tonight. The first time I read about them, it was in a book published by two professors at the International French School in Singapore, Mr. Maxime Pilon and Mrs. Danielle Veller. And they made research and found out that when Raffles visited Singapore for the first time, he recruited before two French naturalists in Calcutta, in India, because they were the best experts on natural history in the region. And so then I wanted to learn more about them. And we found out that in Paris, in the Museum of Natural History, their drawings were preserved. And so we uncovered, this series of beautiful drawings and paintings, and that's how we found out about it.
Yes, Martin, let's bring you in on the conversation here. I mean, these two individuals, Duvaucel and Diard, they were very good at drawing, but they collected lots of specimens as well, didn't they? Tell us more about what they mean for Singapore's natural history and the preservation of what we know today.
The Diard and Duvaucel, they were, of course, the first two naturalists, together with Raffles and a Scottish botanist, to come to Singapore in May 1819. And they spent about 4 weeks here in what would become Singapore's first natural history outing or expedition. And during this time, we know that they collected extensively from around Singapore. We know they made drawings. And one of the drawings that was, of course, found in the Paris Museum was the turtle. It's a forest turtle, and it actually has Singapore handwritten in the upper left-hand corner. So that is definitive evidence that it was drawn here. And because they were so early here, and they collected extensively, they basically provide us with a baseline of what was found here before, a century or 2 centuries of very rapid development took place. So that is, I think, their main contribution to Singapore's natural history.
And how are the drawings different, though, to what we have already?
Well, they are very beautiful. They are, in addition to that, I think they are also very old. I do not think that they are very different in that sense, because the animals have been here for centuries or millennia before us. And but they do provide a snapshot of that time 2 centuries ago.
We actually have a copy of the book. I mean, it's just out now. I want the ambassador to tell us what the significance is for the French embassy having, sort of uncovered their collection.
Well, first, it's also a way to get insight about, the fauna and flora of Singapore 200 years ago, and also about the neighboring islands, as you said. It was also because of the bicentennial in Singapore, so it was the best opportunity, to shed a new light on their story and also their connection with Raffles. And I think it was very interesting, to see that they had some kind of sometimes a tense relationship with Raffles. So you have to read the book and you will have all the details. And the other thing, it's also because it was a way to illustrate, that since then we kept collaborating on natural history. And so the book, which has been published through the collaboration between Lee Kong Chian Museum and the museum in Paris, shows that since then till now on, actually, there have always been expedition, collective expedition between France and Singapore on natural history.
Yes.
And you've planned some events around this as well, around this exhibition, around this, the drawings?
Yes, so tomorrow we will, and I let, Martin.
Thank you, Ambassador. So tomorrow we will actually be launching this book. which details not just that early natural history with the two Frenchmen and Raffles, but also an entire century's worth of French expeditions to Singapore, which were there many to speak of, and they're in the book. So we will be launching the book tomorrow. The picture of that turtle with Singapore written at the top is actually on display at the National Museum of Singapore. Yeah, as part of their an all new world.
Right.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, there will be also tomorrow night, starting tomorrow night, video mapping on the facades in Armenian Street with all the different drawings.
Like a projection imaging?
Exactly,
on the walls?
yes. And it's arranged by a French artist called Julien Donon.
Oh, wonderful.
And also some of the drawings are on display now at the National Museum within the exhibition An Old New World. What is very important is also that it's a joint endeavor between Total, the museum in Paris, but also Li Gongqian Museum, the National Museum, national parks, and the National Library in Singapore. So you see there are many parties who got involved.
Yes, and Dia and Duvorcel were responsible for some 2,000 of those specimens in the Paris Natural History Museum. I think it will be very interesting for Singaporeans to see some of the drawings of these birds and other animals that we don't see today. And to have a sort of an understanding about just why. I mean, a lot has changed.
It's also a testimony on how we have a shared commitment for biodiversity. And I think it's also a message we wanted to convey, I mean, both countries, that we should also, I mean, contribute to make our planet great again.
Yes. Thank you very much for coming into the studios and talking to us about this wonderful publication and the collaboration with Voila as well. We've been speaking there to Marc Ambassadeur, he's the ambassador of France to Singapore, and Martin Lau, he's the research associate at the Li Gongqian Natural History Museum.